Welcome into the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, Week 12 waivers. Here we go. And look, Landon, we're going to start this one off with some bad news. I mean, if you have been tuned into the channel, you would have saw yesterday a wonderful video by my co-host Lando outlining the J.K. Dobbins breakout. But sad enough, he came down with COVID. Tested positive for COVID on Monday of this week, and things don't look great for J.K. Dobbins, but we might not be dismissing him as an ad this week. Lando, what's going on with you, buddy?
Yo, Mackie, it's unfortunate, but Mark Ingram also came down with COVID. So the question is, do you go with Gus Edwards as Mr. Necessity? He's only 29% owned. Now they play Pittsburgh this week. Are we starting Gus Edwards? I know it's early in the week, Mac, but these are the questions that need to be answered.
And for me, Gus Edwards is not a waiver claim I'm looking to make, either spending priority or spending fab. I'm kind of out on Gus Edwards, and to be honest, I wasn't really looking to start J.K. Dobbins against the Steelers anyway. So what we said about J.K. Dobbins and his breakout, his ascension in this offense doesn't really change. I mean, him getting COVID is unfortunate, but we know that some people with COVID can be asymptomatic. They don't necessarily get the pneumonia-like experience. So J.K. Dobbins could be all in well. And I didn't really want to play him this week, so for him to take 2 weeks and get healthy, I want him for the fantasy playoffs. So I'm almost hoping that my league mates drop J.K. Dobbins and I can scoop him up on the cheap. So that's kind of what I want you to do this week is watch out in your leagues for owners dropping J.K. Dobbins and be savvy and pick him up. I do think he's a great stash, and that breakout is for real.
And we have some running back ads this week that you can play this week. But you're absolutely right, Mac. If you don't need a running back this week, if you have an empty roster position, add J.K. Dobbins if he's available in your league, and this is going to pay off into the playoffs.
Yeah, to be honest, this isn't the week where you're going out and getting a running back that's going to be a game changer for you. It's really a spot start this week. At the top of our list will be Wayne Gallman, who's 52% rostered, and his, I guess, spot in this offense is really kind of cemented given that Devonta Freeman is still on IR. He has been very touchdown dependent. He's scored 5 times in the last 4 games, but the good news is about volume, his carry count has gone up week over week over week over the last 3 weeks. So we're seeing some good things out of Wayne Gallman. He's getting into the end zone. He's got that touchdown upside, and he plays a Cincinnati defense that isn't much to write home about. So I do think that Wayne Gallman is a good spot start this week if you are running back needy, but it's not a guy that I see long-term value in. So a spot start this week, but don't blow the bank on him.
Before you move on, and if you have a league where you're a little bit of a shallower league, 8 to 10 team league, check for Damien Harris, running back for the New England Patriots. He is mostly owned, but he is a great start, especially with Rex Burkhead going down. With that being said, James White should also be a must-add at the running back position. He's going to be available in second and third down scenarios to spell Damien Harris. I'm not too concerned with Sony Michel coming back. That doesn't leave James White with any less opportunities. James White can be a spot start as well. And if you're in any kind of PPR league, that leaves his floor super high.
Yeah, and with Rex Burkhead going down, who's been averaging about 9.5 touches per game on a 40% snap share, he is the guy that we needed to be removed from this offense because as a pass catcher, he's stealing away James White's work. And if we look back to the runs that the New England Patriots have made the last couple of years, James White has been a staple in that offense. And I think Cam Newton needs to check it down a little bit more, and his only option will be James White. Yes, Sony Michel came back last week, was a healthy scratch, did not play. Sony Michel is not a pass catcher, and really neither is Damian Harris to the extent that James White is. So I think James White is a flex consideration in a deeper league, but like Landon said, if you want a guy to chew the clock, it's Damian Harris in a shallower league, James White certainly in a deeper league. Thoughts on Cam Akers, Landon? Only 30% owned. He's being sprinkled in by the Rams a little bit more each and every week.
So Cam Akers is the last of the rookies that we expected a breakout to happen. I do believe there's still a possibility, but we have seen a three-headed monster a little bit in LA with Henderson and Brown there as well. So I don't think Akers is actually going to break out this season. He's more of a stash, just in case if someone gets hurt, that he has a chance to get the opportunity. But right now, it looks like Brown and Henderson are getting the majority of the carries, and none of them are going to be ultra relevant in fantasy for the rest of the season. If I were to roster anyone, it's still going to be Henderson.
Yeah, moving on to the wide receiver position here, we've got Michael Pittman. Now, if you have been a listener to the channel, you would have seen Michael Pittman on last week's waiver show, and he had another great game. He is the wide receiver one for this Indianapolis Colts offense. He's only 43% owned, and people have not wanted to believe in the breakout for Michael Pittman, but it is here. If he's still available for you, I would consider spending my number one priority or a really good chunk of my fab to get him anywhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30%. I truly believe that he is a special talent and will be the go-to guy down the stretch for these Colts, other than Jonathan Taylor.
Speaking of special talent, I think it's now time to look for Deebo Samuel on the waiver wires. He is 51% owned, and coming off their bye, he should be healthy. Now, they play the LA Rams this week. It's not a great start. His schedule isn't great, but I think you need to roster him and not start him because he is the go-to wide receiver, even with Ayuk on the field. And Ayuk was added to the COVID IR list. I'm not sure if that means he will play or not coming this week. If Deebo is the only option in that offense, he will get rushes, he will get passes. They will use him in every kind of way, and Deebo Samuel will be a very gadget player going forward, and in a spot start could have a super safe floor again going into the playoffs.
Another guy I think you should roster at the wide receiver position, if you have a spot, if you want to take a chance on someone, it's rookie wide receiver Jalen Reagor for the Eagles. And if we think back to this wide receiver class, the rookies, they've been unbelievable. Jalen Reagor, had he not been injured for the first 8 weeks of the season, I think we'd be talking about him in a much bigger capacity. But Jalen Reagor continues to get a decent amount of targets. He was 4 for 52 this week. And Travis Fulgham has really disappeared from this offense. And kind of like what we said, if you came by our Sunday live stream, we do an hour 45 start sit, 11 a.m. to 12:45 Eastern Standard every single Sunday. We told a ton of people, you need to sit down Travis Fulgham. The time has come for his days to be up. And Jalen Reagor is starting to make a real difference in this offense. It's all dependent on Carson Wentz to start playing some good football. He's really struggled to see guys open downfield. Had Reagor open on a couple plays for, 10, 20, 30 yards, even had him open for 6 once and missed him. I like Jalen Reagor as a big boom bust play down the stretch. I think he's worth a little bit of fab, only 28% rostered. If
you're in a shallow league and Jakobi Meyers is available, he is a must-add player. He is 59% owned in Yahoo leagues, and he is getting a ridiculous amount of target share in that New England offense. It should be a great ad. But before I continue on, I do want to take a look at our Allen Lazard as well. And finally, a low floor, low ceiling player for the New York Giants, Sterling Shepard. He's not a fun, exciting player to add, but he's seen consistent targets. They play Cincinnati this week. He could be a decent spot start at the wide receiver position.
Fantastic. I think Cole Beasley's a name that we should throw in there too. Just look at him in terms of a PPR league. He gets the volume. He always gives you more than what you thought. And I think he's super underrated if he's available in your league. Again, 50% ownership. Go and get yourself some Cole Beasley. It's not a start that makes you feel warm and fuzzy on the inside, but he'll get it done. He won't leave you high and dry.
If you're still watching and want some specific advice, check out our socials. We are snap_fantasy. Get our DMs, and we can let you know what players to add, what players to start, what players to trade away, and what players to trade for. That is snap_fantasy. and one of these two hosts will respond to you 100% of the time.
Landon, I got to ask you, if you are needing some help at the quarterback position right now, are you looking for Taysom Hill, 42% owned? It seems like he'd be started or owned everywhere, but that's not the case. But after this week, are you kind of buying into the relevance of Taysom Hill?
It was only a matter of time before we talked about Taysom Hill. I think you can definitely add Taysom Hill. They play Denver, Atlanta, Philly. I don't expect Drew Brees to be back in the next 2 weeks. Well, he's on IR. He cannot come back. And that is some juicy matchups for Taysom Hill. Alvin Kamara is really hurting now that Taysom Hill is at the quarterback position. We weren't sure what the narrative was going to be. If it was going to be Jameis Winston half the game or after the second snap, you don't know. But Taysom Hill stayed in the entire game. They won the game. It seems like he's going to be a low floor, potentially high ceiling player with his rushing ability, and he had some decent passes. He passed to Michael Thomas a ton. So I'm definitely willing to start Taysom Hill. Make sure to tune in for our start sits, like Max said, to find out how high we actually have him this week.
And it's interesting to see what happens with a mobile quarterback paired with the running back. I mean, Cam Newton not checking the ball down to James White literally at all. You look at the Baltimore running backs, really, Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins not getting the passing work due to Lamar's mobility. The same thing kind of exists here with Taysom Hill. Alvin Kamara, for the first time in his career, did not catch a pass in Sunday's contest. So you kind of think that, does Taysom Hill fit the scheme that supports Alvin Kamara as a PPR monster? I tend to think no, but I'd be willing to pick up Taysom Hill. He looked good as a passer. He was aggressive as a runner. I think maybe that gets him into trouble, but that's what he's been. So I don't know how much Sean Payton's going to give him the green light to be running downfield and taking contact, but it looks like he'll have at least another 2 weeks under the helm. So I do think that he is a good pickup, maybe a streaming play. They play Denver this week. I think that's a good spot for him. Should be a nice matchup. And for those of you that enjoyed the Taysom Hill at tight end, if you play on NFL Fantasy, that's going away this week. So you enjoyed the quarterback at the tight end position, which feels like cheating, but that has come to an end. Is there anybody else that you'd be willing to stream this week, Landon? PJ Walker was a nice play for those of you that stepped up and had some confidence.
Yeah, that was not me, I'll tell you that. But Teddy Bridgewater is looking to come back. They play Minnesota. Not a bad matchup. I would consider going with Daniel Jones at Cincinnati. I would say that's probably my stream of the week. He's the lowest owned and has a really good matchup. Derek Carr should be considered. Phillip Rivers versus Tennessee should be considered. I'm staying away from Tua Tagovailoa as the chance of him getting benched at any time is now present. They have announced that he will be the starter against the Jets. Sounds like a great matchup, but I have zero confidence in that now.
And it's tough for him to have confidence too, getting the bench. He was turned over to be the starter after their bye. We kind of all scoffed at that and said, is that the right move? And they've been winning games with him, but now a bad game, benched. Fitzpatrick comes in. We'll see how he returns. But elite quarterbacks are able to do that, so this is a good sign for him if he can right the ship. Over to the tight end position, we've got 3 names that we want you to consider picking up. Jordan Reed, Dalton Schultz, and Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas is the highest owned on the list at 54%. I know he had a down game. That's why I think you can pick him up. Tight end landscape is so ugly right now that anybody who has touchdown upside is really worth the play, and Logan Thomas certainly has that. Alex Smith struggled in this game, but he should continue to be used. He has a really consistent target share. So I like Logan Thomas still, 54% owned. I would pick him up, and people might be dropping him.
Couldn't agree more, Mac. I think that's a great list.
Jordan Reed, 14%. Dalton Schultz, 21% owned. Dalton Schultz has that touchdown upside, which you have seen, and Jordan Reed might be used just out of pure necessity. I don't see Ross Dwelley being a huge factor.
Great. Yeah, touchdown dependency. That's all we can ask for from the tight end position.
100%. So listen, if you guys have liked today's video, you found some useful information, please go ahead and click that like button, as well as considering subscribing to the channel. Also, a rating and review on Apple Podcasts goes a long way. So check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get that. Leave us a rating and review. Like Landon said, at @snap_fantasy on Instagram and Twitter. Get us there, and we'll see you guys on Thursday for our podcast. Have a great week. Win that waiver.